All right, guys. I think we're going here, Johnny. I got something that said something went wrong, but I think something just went right. I think we're good for this podcast. As I can see the counter is going. I'm back. You're back. It's time to talk Penn State football here in now late July. I just came off vacation. I know you were out of the country. You've got some other things going on. I'm excited about that, but you know what? The summer, as we said off air, Johnny, is for if you cover Penn State football or you're an NFL beat writer, the summer's pretty much over. It's over. It's time to get serious. Penn State's going to be in Las Vegas this weekend for the Big Ten Media Day appearance on Wednesday. We're recording this at noontime on Monday. And Johnny, ahead of the Big Ten Media Days, the Cleveland.com folks that cover Ohio State and do a great job with that released all three or four of their preseason polls because the Big Ten really doesn't have any. They've been doing this since 2011. Preseason rankings are out. Preseason Coach of the Year is out. Preseason Defensive Player of the Year is out. Preseason Offensive Player is out. Pretty long lists. I think Johnny. Before I throw it to you, we'll start wherever you would like to start. But yeah, Penn State's going to be in Vegas this week. I'm going to go out with my man Joe Hermit. Looking forward to that. But we're just catching up. We haven't talked in a while, so I know you're doing well as well.
Yeah, I know. I think before anything else, we want to acknowledge that this is our first podcast together, me and you, in quite some time. I think it's over a month now at this point because it was one of those like sliding doors moments where I was taking my PTO and you and Max were recording. You took your PTO, Max and I were recording. And so This is the first time we've been able to chop it up in a while. So I hope you're doing well. I hope you were able to enjoy your time off. I'm sure you were. And but like you mentioned, Bob, the summer is rapidly, closing. I feel like the last time me and you were on here with the Blue White Breakdown on PennLive, we were talking. It was June. We were talking recruiting. We were talking in terms of what might come in training camp. And now for Penn State, that's a couple weeks away. It feels like Big Ten Media Days and all the college football media days. It's kind of the unofficial start of the season in terms of coverage and everything else, recruiting aside. And hey, you mentioned NFL training camps are starting to open. So there's a lot going on, but very excited to chat with you today.
Yep. And Penn State has been one of the hot button teams this whole off season because they are, if the fan base knows it, everyone knows it. I think that follows the team. Big Ten media know it. They're all in, much like Ohio State was last year. Michigan was a couple years ago. They've invested in a lot of their veteran players coming back. They've invested heavily in the transfer portal. They've addressed a lot of needs. They have a lot of very good talent returning. We were impressed by some young players this spring in the blue-white game that might actually help them as well. And that all leads me to say this. I think there were 25 people who cover the Big Ten who voted in the Cleveland.com preseason poll, 1 through 18. That's right. There's now 18 teams in the Big Ten. Penn State is number one in the preseason poll, just barely ahead of Ohio State. I believe Oregon is third. Not surprising. Illinois is fourth, and Michigan got a first place vote. They're fifth. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. Does anything surprise you? Or I think they got it right at the top, but there's always one of the teams that's going to be that's probably ranked in this top 10. Is going to be better than a lot of people realize and jump up and bite some people. But I just didn't know top to bottom what your thoughts are on the Big Ten this year. There's a couple of storylines I think that are going to emerge not only in the Big Ten, Johnny, but also throughout college football. But let's start with you and kind of your take on where did the Big Ten media get it right and where did they get it wrong, if you think about it.
Yeah, I was going to say we can dive into the players, the preseason defensive, offensive players, and the preseason coach. Number one coach in the league. We can get to that in a sec. But let's start with the overall poll. I'm not surprised that Penn State is number one. They've been number one in various way too early rankings across the country. They were my preseason number one team after spring camp, and I got my AP ballot, preseason ballot. Coming up in a couple weeks, and Penn State might be pretty high in that one as well. So it's not surprising to see them number one. But it is just another data point. Like, again, like the football has to be played. This is preseason stuff we're talking about. But, for a Big Ten media contingent to see what Penn State has as well and recognize it, and just to see them above Ohio State is still just a little jarring. Like, again, I'm not surprised, but it is at the same time, like, the expectations are sky high for this team this year, and understandably so. And you go down the list, though, it is a top-heavy, very good, group up the top, in the Big Ten this year. And I think Illinois deserves some credit there at 4.
Yeah.
I get it. Michigan getting a first-place vote. Like, I think Michigan will be a sneaky good team this year. And by sneaky good, like, I don't think they're going to be winning the national title like they did a couple of years ago, but after last year, it can only go up from there. The year that they had in first year with Sharon Moore as head coach. But the difference between Penn State and Ohio State is understandably narrow. Like the voting wise, the votes. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting Big Ten year, and still a little jarring to see Penn State at the top, but again, with good reason.
Yep. They have a lot of talent. They have a lot of proven talent, like the transfer portal. I think that they pretty much got that right as well. Even when you think of not only at the wide receiver position, which they needed to do, but also don't overlook Campbell, the linebacker they were able to add. I think after spring, I think that's going to be one I'm going to be watching very closely, because I think that was a pretty big need. And I think he's a pretty good player. So I don't know if you're a Penn State fan, if you could have asked for a better off season. They got through spring relatively, as far as we know, relatively healthy. Some players were held out. The Granville loss, Max Granville loss, I think that will be something we'll be following as well. Michigan is a team that on talent alone, and they got the young quarterback, I think Greenwood, who is going to be a watch player this year. But on talent alone, but it was a little surprising to see them get a first place vote. Then again, they kind of own Ohio State, so maybe whoever voted for them was not wrong. When I look at the top 10, I'm glad that Illinois got some recognition. They are a scrappy team that's gotten better and better. Credit to Bielema for what he's been able to do. They have a veteran quarterback coming back. They have some good defensive players. To me, the one I thought would be a little bit higher, only because of what happened last year and what they were able to do. I thought maybe Indiana. I think I want to say they are at 6 or 7, something like that. I thought maybe based upon last year and what they were able to do, they're at 6. They're right behind Michigan, not far behind Michigan. To me, that's a very interesting team. They have some really good defensive talent coming back, and the quarterback, I think they were able to add Mendoza. That's going to be a guy that guy, if he's healthy, could go a long way towards determining how this Big Ten race kind of plays out in terms of sleepers. Because I think he's a good player, and I think I do think Cignetti knows what to do with a good quarterback. So that was one at 6. I could see them maybe swapping places with another team, but just quarterbacks in general, Johnny. It's just rare to see a fourth-year quarterback as talented as Drew come back. Obviously, he's got some things he still wants to do. Some things maybe he wants to prove, but you go down the list, man, and it's not just in the Big Ten; it's everywhere. Almost everyone that was good last year with a quarterback that was draft eligible is either starting over or counting on a new face. And I think you just have to get used to it. Penn State's going to be doing it next year.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why Penn State is considered so highly by so many. Is it doesn't start and end with the quarterback position, because we've seen teams win national titles or conference titles with just average quarterback play and just great talent around them. But we all know what a great quarterback can do for a team and a program in terms of elevating them to a level that they haven't gotten to before. And that's the thinking, that's the idea, that's the goal for Drew Aller this season with Penn State, with those national title aspirations and hopes. And you look across the country, not just in the Big Ten, but you'd be hard pressed to find a former 5-star recruit who has developed the way he has developed and is a third-year starter, because I think that's why a lot of NFL draft analysts and experts have looked ahead already to the 2026 NFL draft and said, hey, he's a guy who could go number one, because that experience is invaluable. And it's invaluable at the next level, and it's invaluable at the college level. And so, with Drew and everything around him, we mentioned the transfer portal, bringing in Pena, Hudson, and Ross. You have three, productive wide receivers who can play different roles. You bring back arguably the best offensive line in the Big Ten and one of the best in the country. You bring back what I think is the best backfield in the country with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Yes, you have to replace Tyler Warren. But in terms of the offense, I mean, they're one of the best offenses in the country in terms of what they bring back, the talent. And then you have Andy Kotelnicki coordinating for a second season, and that continuity, that matters a lot. It matters a lot. And then you look at the defense, and, Penn State's defense has churned through coordinators. They've churned through first-round picks. And just consistently under James Franklin, they've been among the best in the country. So adding Jim Knowles, Ohio State's defensive coordinator, to the mix and saying, here's a bunch of talent. I know we lose Abdul Carter, Max Granville out for the year, and the list goes on, I guess. But AJ Harris in the secondary, Zaki Wheatley, Denai Dennis Sutton up front, like the list, like Zane Durant. There's just a lot of talent on this team, and it's really hard to ignore, Bob.
Yeah, it is. It is. And Penn State, and again, so Penn State preseason number one. First time ever in the history of the Cleveland.com poll. It's been pretty much dominated by early on. It was Ohio State, Wisconsin. Michigan got better under Harbaugh, and it's just been Michigan State, I think, had one good year. So it's really been those teams kind of at the top. James, not that a preseason poll top ranking necessarily means anything, but they've never been number one before. They have a schedule, I think, that's very challenging, but also very interesting. And also, they get a couple of good teams at home. Indiana, obviously, Oregon. They got to go to Ohio State. We're getting ahead of ourselves. I think that they did get it right. If you wanted to flip flop Oregon and Ohio State, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But Ohio State has proven they can develop kids quickly. They get Penn State at home. If the quarterback, whoever the quarterback is good, they're going to be good. They have two just phenomenal players at key positions, wideout and safety. Both of them are preseason players of the year on offense and defense. Jeremiah Smith, the big wideout, Caleb Downs, the safety from Alabama. I think, we can talk about that briefly before we get to the coach. Penn State's well represented on both the offensive player of the year and defensive player of the year lists. They have a pair of runners-up in Drew Aller and I believe Denai Dennis Sutton. Other people were also singled out, but watching how Jeremiah and Caleb Downs played for Ohio State as young players down the stretch, they'd be my picks as well.
Yeah, I had Ohio State as my number one team in the way too early rankings days after the national championship game. And we know that they lost a lot. But my reasoning at the time was they have the two best players in college football coming back to them, Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs on either side of the ball. And Jeremiah was unbelievable in the CFP. Caleb Downs has been unbelievable, at both stops at Alabama and Ohio State. There's a reason why both of those guys are among the handful of players on the NCAA, or excuse me, not NCAA, but EA Sports College Football 26 cover. They are unbelievable players, and when you have two foundational pieces like that on either side of the ball, you're a national title contender, no matter what. And so, for both of those guys to be named preseason offensive and defensive players of the Big Ten. Totally understand. Drew Aller was second in the offensive voting. I believe Nick Singleton was third. And then Denai Dennis Sutton was second in the defensive voting.
Yeah.
And so I think the gap was pretty good between those two, which, for both of those, which, again, totally understandable because of how good Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs are. Looking at the list, though, like looking down a bit, some other guys who interest me a lot. On the offensive side of the ball, Mekhi Hughes, the running back at Oregon, super productive transfer in from Tulane. Watching Tulane last year, and I really thought as the early part of the season progressed, I thought they were going to be that group of 5 representative for the CFP. Ultimately, it was Boise State and Nash and Genty. Tough to ignore them. But I thought Tulane was a good team last year. Mekhi Hughes was a huge part of that. Dylan Thieneman as well, the safety from Oregon, transferring for Purdue. We talk a lot about the portal. I think the big winner of the portal this offseason was Oregon. They added some pieces up front as well, but Thieneman and Hughes, you'd be hard pressed to find more high impact transfers that are not quarterbacks and guys who can really turn a Big Ten contender into a national title contender. So that's where I think Oregon being that number 3 team in the poll, with a boatload of talent, even though they lose a lot to the NFL as well. Thieneman, Hughes, those guys are going to be big parts of that.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts from me. I am glad that somebody gave Deny a first, a number 1 overall vote, because I do think, as good as Caleb Downs is, if Deny takes a step forward off of what he did in the postseason, I could see him being the best defender in the Big Ten, and that's saying something. As good as Caleb Downs is, I'm real curious to see who gave him a first place vote, but I'm not mad about it, because I do think Deny down the stretch there for Penn State. Downs was great, but Deny and obviously Abdul were great too. I would have liked to have seen Zaki, as good as he was. Once he got comfortable as the number 2 safety after Winston got hurt, he was really, really good in December, November in the playoffs. There's all these players are deserving. I wouldn't have been. I think he could have gotten a little recognition for a defender as well. But those Caleb Downs and Thieneman, man, those are 2. They're going to go real early. I think does Caleb have another year left, or is he done?
I think he might, but I mean, shoot, he could be like,
if he's draft eligible, he should come out, and those 2 will go early. I think Zaki is a guy that I just really think pretty highly of, maybe more so. And I do think he had the counting stats to kind of bear it out. He had another great postseason. Zane Durant got some love. That was good as well. On the offensive side, hey, man, it's always about the quarterbacks and the running backs and the wideouts. Not a lot of love for tight ends, and very little love for offensive linemen. I agree with you. Penn State, I think they have the best offensive line in the Big Ten, and is in the discussion for nationwide very easily. A lot of those guys I think people are going to be talking about as the season unfolds if they stay healthy. Just a great list, and it's just weird to me, Johnny, to not see USC. They're still kind of struggling to find their footing in the Big Ten with Lincoln Riley. Hot and cold team. They play well for stretches, but they had some bad losses. That's a very polarizing team to me. I think Lincoln Riley has to get it right this year. I don't think the leash is quite as long maybe for him after the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, USC is one of those programs that historically we look at in college football as a winner. And you look back to the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush years, and even before that, you would like, if you're USC, to be a CFP contender when you're in your second year in the Big Ten, and that's not looking like it's going to be the case this upcoming season. I was looking at the team-wide poll. I think they're 9th in the Big Ten. A sleeper team also out on the West Coast, right behind them, that I kind of like. Their schedule is really hard. So the win-loss record might not look great at the end of the year, but in terms of friskiness and giving some better teams a run, for me, is Washington. And Jonah Coleman, their running back, who was really talented, got some love in the offensive poll, the offensive player poll. And then one guy who I'm really looking forward to seeing is their quarterback, Damon Williams Jr. That kid is electric. He can run, he can scramble, he can extend plays. And just someone that I think not a lot of people are talking about that could really give Washington some juice this upcoming season. So that's just a name to know, just kind of off the cuff, just a player that, I've liked what I've seen. And in terms of the reporting out in Washington, they're expecting some big things from him as well.
Plus, they got Amari Evans, Johnny. Let's not forget that.
They do. They got a burner at receiver who can.
They got a burner at receiver. Yeah. We know that, right? So let's see how he does. Johnny, James Franklin. You can say what you want about his record against Ohio State. I think everyone knows he's only beaten them once. They got to he might get a couple shots at him this year if the season plays out the way many people expect. They definitely play them. They definitely play them in Columbus in early November. But he is the choice for Big Ten preseason Coach of the Year. I think it's well deserved for what he was able to do. I think last year, how he was able to kind of hold the veterans and bring the team back. The portal work he's done, getting Jim Knowles. Let's not overlook that. That's another huge deal. I think he barely won over Brett Bielema. It was like a one. I think it was 10-9. Ryan Day got 3 votes. I think the Michigan coach got 1 vote. Any thoughts on what is in front of James Franklin this year, and just your thoughts overall on the Illinois head coach? Because they they are scrappy. They put guys in the NFL. They're not a lot of fun to play. Penn State got the better of them in the whiteout game last year. Kind of a slugfest, but Penn State's defense the last 2 years has just thoroughly foiled Luke Altmaier, who's had some big moments against other teams. But they got some good defenders. They've always got a good running game. Just your thoughts maybe on the Coach of the Year, and is there you just mentioned a guy you're going to be watching at quarterback for the Huskies. Is there a coach in the Big Ten that maybe is not so obvious to you, that's a coach you always watch and you think he's a little bit better than people realize?
Yeah, I'll start with James Franklin and Bielema. And I mentioned earlier that it was a little bit jarring, even though I understand why. A bit jarring to see Penn State ahead of Ohio State in the overall poll, right? It was a bit jarring to see the reigning national champion head coach be third in the conference preseason, like Coach of the Year poll. But I understand if this was the line of thinking of a lot of the voters, was this is just the preseason. And so we're taking into account the offseason, basically, that these programs had. Brett Bielema was able to retain a heck of a lot of talent from an Illinois team that won 10 games last year. James Franklin was able to retain a heck of a lot of talent. And, obviously, revenue sharing and, NIL prior to that, like that plays a part in getting some of these talented guys back, that they're able to offer at least something competitive to what they might have made as NFL players. And there's, personal development, whether it's degrees or actual like NFL draft stock that these guys want to do and everything. But the fact that Penn State was able to make it to the CFP semifinal and come so close to playing in the national championship last year, that's a big part of that is roster construction and development. And that kind of starts with James Franklin, right? And the fact that they were so close to getting to that game makes it a goal for this year and makes it a reasonable thing that Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, and all those guys can feasibly can say, hey, we can go do that. And again, that kind of starts with the foundation that's been laid, the recruiting, the development, assistant coaches, everything that James Franklin has helped put Penn State in position for. And so in terms of I understand Penn State fans who might be more on the negative side of James Franklin saying, hey, he hasn't beat Ohio State in forever. Come to me when he beats, Oregon in the Big Ten title game, like that kind of thing. I understand that. But if we're talking about just a preseason coach poll and based on the offseason that they just had, sure. I mean, few coaches in the country have had a better offseason than James Franklin. It's just a matter of now, obviously, putting all that to good use and making it all worthwhile and beating Ohio State and Oregon in the regular season and ultimately getting after that ultimate goal of winning a national title.
Yeah, and like we said, look, if Penn State stays healthy, and as long as the season is, if you think about teams that are going to be playing, past the regular season, it's just really hard to go unbeaten. It just is. There's going to be some weeks that things don't go your way. A kid gets hurt, or the other team just is a little bit better that day. That's just part of life in the Big Ten. There's just too many challenges on the schedule, and I think that. It may very well be, James might get Ohio State more than once, or they might see Oregon more than once. And those are 2 really good coaching staffs as well. But yeah, I think he's deserving of the preseason nod. And I think it's a fascinating season for Penn State because they are definitely all in. And just looking around the Big Ten, I mentioned Lincoln Riley and USC. You mentioned Washington and the Huskies. Just 2 teams. Michigan, I just think is I'm really interested to see how they evolve offensively because I think they're always going to be good on defense. You touched on Illinois. Just two teams for me that I think just bear watching. I think it's a big year for Nebraska and Matt Rule with that quarterback back. They lost some players, but they have to take a step forward. There's no question. And also, Penn State played this team last year, and Aller gets knocked out of the game, and they come up. Reed gets the pick six interception. Former Penn State quarterback Bo Prabula got better in the second half the more experience he got. But Wisconsin, you know what? They can't. They have to be a little bit more formidable. I'm not sure what their identity is anymore. So those are two teams. I think they have them. Nebraska's ranked 8th, and I think Wisconsin's ranked 12th. If they finish 12th and 8th in the Big Ten, I don't think either fan base is going to be particularly happy. So those are two, I think. A couple of these teams are going to jump up, and I just wonder about those two teams and Lincoln Riley. And I do think the line forms in the Big Ten at the start behind Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely. One other coach to throw in there, and you talked about this team earlier, Indiana with Curt Cignetti. I mean, the guy took Indiana to the playoff in his first year as a head coach, and a lot of that talent moves on, and it's a transfer portal-based program, but they got after it in the portal. And you mentioned Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback from Cal, who showed some really good things last year, and they're expecting him to be really good for them this upcoming season. He added a lot of other pieces in the portal. They bring back actually a decent amount of talent. Like, you would think that the entire program is gone. It's not. One guy I'm really looking forward to watching again this year is Kamara. Their edge rusher is really good.
Very good.
And so that's a team and a coach who maybe still isn't getting enough credit, or, again, being overlooked perhaps, but they'll be coming to Beaver Stadium later in the season, and intrigued to see what that team looks like by that point. Another coach, I'm curious to see how it goes, and kind of more from just like a career, it's Kirk Ferentz in Iowa. Yeah. And I'm just really intrigued to see what Iowa does this year, what they look like. Are they going to score points, or are they going to continue to be defense and special teams points only? They were a little bit better last year when Kirk's son wasn't calling the plays, but we'll see if they can score a little bit more this season. But in terms of just like his career looking forward, like, he's an older guy. He's like the elder statesman of college football at this point. How many years does he have left at Iowa, and what are they going to look like this year? Just for me personally, just interested to see how that's going to pan out, look like.
Yeah, Penn State's going out there for a game. They've had some very memorable battles during James Franklin's time, and especially out there, maybe more so than at Beaver Stadium. Penn State traditionally has played very well in a very intimidating environment. They've had some memorable games during James's time. But yeah, that's going to be that's a game that's hard to get a feel for this Iowa team. I believe they got a really talented, I want to say it was an FCS quarterback that they've imported to kind of, because I looked at the passing numbers for the quarterbacks they used last year, and it was a blight. It was a blight on the Big Ten. It was just, guys, you cannot continue to play football like it's the early 1980s, and he seems like that's his comfort zone. But you're not gonna go very far in the Big Ten against these teams, and teams that are going to be able to add in the portal and recruit well. You're not going to win until you can consistently score in the 20s. So that is a team to watch. I think it's really going to be an intriguing Big Ten season. Penn State kicks off its season, I think, on the final Saturday of August against I believe it's the Wolfpack of Nevada. I think that's them. And then things won't get interesting until Dan Lanning and his Ducks come in to Beaver Stadium in the whiteout. I'm sure no Penn State fans are excited about that already. But and plus, Johnny, we still haven't talked. I'm still eager to see what the stadium's going to look like, man. Like, I'm still not quite sure how it's going up there. People put updates on Twitter about how it's going. I hope it's at least on schedule. I probably possible to be ahead of schedule, and I'm really hoping it's not too far behind schedule. But that's the other intrigue. If you're a Penn State fan, I think you got to be a little curious about where you're going to be watching the game and what's going to look like.
I think that's going to be the most intriguing part of the season opener, Bob, against Nevada, which I think there's an early line on that already out. And it's
43 and a half or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty large. So I'm most intrigued, I think, by that season opener of what Beaver Stadium looks like, the fan experience, because obviously there's going to be some fans who are displaced from their normal seating, and what all that looks like, and also what the press box looks like. What we're going to be working with. Obviously, fans don't really care about that, but we do. But yeah, obviously the season is, a little more than a month away at this point, which feels crazy. But you're going to have a lot of really good coverage out in Vegas. Jealous of that. I'm sure you and Joe will have a good time and be providing a lot from James Franklin and the player contingent that's out there, and all the Big Ten storylines. I'll be back here in Philly, and I guess it's a good time to talk about this maybe as we wrap up the pod.
Whenever you're ready. Yeah.
Our publisher sent out a letter to our subscribers, so you might, if you're listening to this, you might already know this, but I'm taking on kind of a dual role, moving forward in covering Penn State football as well as the Philadelphia Eagles, and taking advantage of where I live here in Philly. I'll be at Beaver Stadium for the home games. I'll be at the Link for the home games. The schedule breaks perfectly. The in-depth features, the analysis, the columns, the thoughts, musings will remain the same on Penn State as well as Eagles. AP vote, still rocking with that. So everyone who likes to read that Sunday mornings will be able to do that still. My ballot each and every week. And looking forward to a new challenge, and looking forward to seeing what you and Max get up to on the road during Big Ten season. I'll be out at the Ohio State game, but you guys will handle the rest.
Okay. Let's see. So you mentioned Big Ten Media Day. So it'll be James, it'll be Drew Aller, Zakee Wheatley, and Nick Dawkins. 3 very interesting guys to talk to. Penn State's going to talk on Wednesday. When they're there, I think Ohio State is there on Tuesday. They're not also there when the Michigan contingent's there. There's a couple of interesting teams that'll be there when Penn State's there. Most importantly, the Oregon Ducks will be there the same day that Penn State's talking. And I'm pretty sure I'll be making my way over to Coach Lanning and maybe a couple other players and asking them about their thoughts on maybe a trip to be in the whiteout. I'm sure they're excited. So that's it's going to be fun out there. It'll be a brief trip, but we'll try and get as much coverage on PennLive as possible. Johnny, you got the Eagles and Penn State, so it's never going to be a dull moment for you from about now until sometime in February. I think my only prediction is you're going to be sleeping well at night. I don't think you're going to have to worry about any restlessness. I think you're going to sleep like a champ because you're going to have a pretty full plate. I know you're excited about it. So that's something for Penn State fans to look for as well. But Johnny, good chatting with you. I think hopefully, unless you're on PTO next week, maybe we'll chat again next week. Max is off this week. I'll be reporting from Vegas, a couple of videos with Joe Hermit. Looking forward to it. But yeah, man, in a couple of weeks, it's going to be Penn State Media Day, and who knows what's going to happen then. But Johnny, good chatting with you, and we will talk again soon, my man.
Looking forward to it, Bob.